Imagine being forced by law to hand over a child because your government decided your family was too big, or being jailed for helping a friend escape slavery, or living in constant fear because every message, call, and email could be secretly monitored by someone from the office. And mate, what's crazy is they were actual laws that controlled people's lives. The one-child policy controlled family size, the Fugitive Slave Act made citizens complicit in slavery, and the Patriot Act turned privacy into a crime. Today, we reveal 15 of the most shocking laws ever passed, and some are darker than you can imagine. If you like the work we do, consider subscribing. We begin. 15. The Patriot Act. In the weeks following the September 11th attacks, the United States was gripped by fear. The government wanted stronger tools to prevent future terrorism. The result was the Patriot Act, a sweeping law that dramatically expanded surveillance powers. Authorities could monitor phone calls, emails, bank records, and internet activity. In some cases, they didn't even need traditional warrants. After the Patriot Act was passed, the NSA and FBI gained sweeping surveillance powers. One striking case involved journalist Judith Miller, who was jailed for refusing to reveal her sources during an investigation. Ordinary citizens were also affected. In some instances, banks handed over account details, and private emails were monitored without warrants. Families didn't know their communications were being accessed. People living ordinary lives suddenly felt like they were constantly being watched. Critics called it a violation of privacy and civil liberties, showing how fear can allow governments to pass laws that quietly control millions of lives. But critics quickly raised alarms. Privacy advocates warned that the government now had unprecedented power to watch ordinary citizens. The law allowed roving wiretaps, meaning surveillance could follow a person across multiple devices. Another controversial provision allowed secret searches, where authorities could enter homes without immediate notification. Many feared this blurred the line between safety and intrusion. Over time, reports revealed that surveillance extended far beyond suspected terrorists. Some Americans worried their freedoms were slowly shrinking. Although parts of the Patriot Act were later modified, the debate never truly ended. Whoa! 91.4% of you watching aren't subscribed. Smash that subscribe button right now. 14. Uganda's Anti-Homosexuality Act. If you are gay, then this is the law you might hate. When Uganda passed its Anti-Homosexuality Act, international backlash came almost instantly. The law imposed severe penalties for same-sex relationships, including life imprisonment. Supporters within the country claimed the law defended cultural and religious values. They argued it protected traditional family structures. But critics saw something far darker. The law didn't only punish relationships, it also criminalized support. People who sheltered, assisted, or even failed to report LGBTQ+ individuals could face penalties. This created widespread fear. Friends distanced themselves, families were divided, some individuals fled the country entirely. Human rights organizations warned that the law encouraged violence and discrimination. Reports emerged of increased harassment and attacks. International governments condemned the decision, and some reduced financial aid to Uganda. Despite this, supporters insisted the law reflected the will of the majority. The controversy highlighted a deep global divide over human rights and cultural values. For many observers, the law became a stark example of how legislation can isolate vulnerable communities. It also demonstrated how laws, even when supported locally, can spark worldwide outrage. Years later, this shit continues, and the law remains one of the most controversial legal decisions in modern history. 13. China's one-child policy, 1979, imagine the government deciding how many times you can empty your tank filled with white snow into your wife's tanker. That became reality in China in 1979. Facing rapid population growth, authorities introduced the one-child policy. Families in most urban areas were limited to a single child. Officials argued this was necessary to prevent economic collapse and food shortages. At first, many accepted the idea as a sacrifice for national stability. But enforcement became strict. Couples who violated the rule faced heavy fines, job loss, and social penalties. In some reports, forced sterilizations and abortions were described. The emotional toll was enormous. Parents were forced to make deeply personal decisions under pressure. Over time, another issue emerged: a gender imbalance. Many families preferred sons, leading to millions more boys than girls. This created long-term social problems, including difficulties for men finding partners. The policy also produced an aging population, shrinking the future workforce. Decades later, China reversed the rule, first allowing 2 children, then more. But the effects remain. The one-child policy is often seen as one of the most intrusive government controls over personal life. It showed how far a state might go to manage population. and the human cost that can follow. 12. Jim Crow laws. After slavery ended, many hoped equality would follow. Instead, new laws emerged across the southern United States. Known as Jim Crow laws, they enforced racial segregation in nearly every part of life. Schools, transportation, restaurants, and even public restrooms were separated by race. Officials claimed the system was separate but equal. In reality, it was anything but equal. Facilities for black citizens were underfunded and inferior. These laws also made voting extremely difficult through literacy tests and poll taxes. Violence and intimidation reinforced the system. Those who challenged segregation risked arrest, or worse. Supporters argued the laws preserved social order. Critics saw them as legalized discrimination. For decades, millions lived under this system. It wasn't until the civil rights movement in the 1950s and 60s that major change began. Court rulings and protests eventually dismantled Jim Crow laws. But the damage lasted generations. The laws became a powerful example of how injustice can be written directly into legal systems. Even after repeal, their legacy continued to shape social and economic inequality. 11. The War Measures Act. In October 1970, Canada faced a tense political crisis. A militant group kidnapped a British diplomat and a government official. The country was shocked. In response, the Prime Minister invoked the War Measures Act. Overnight, civil liberties were suspended. Police gained the power to arrest and detain individuals without warrants. Soldiers appeared in major cities. Hundreds of people were detained, many with no connection to the kidnappings. The government argued drastic action was necessary to prevent further violence. Supporters felt reassured seeing strong measures taken. But critics raised serious concerns. Innocent citizens were held without charges. Some spent days in custody before being released. The atmosphere felt tense and uncertain. Civil rights advocates warned that democracy was being weakened. Once the crisis ended, many questioned whether the response had gone too far. Years later, Canada replaced the War Measures Act with a more limited emergency law. Still, the incident remains controversial. It demonstrated how quickly freedoms can be suspended and how difficult it is to balance security with civil liberties during moments of fear. 10. Prohibition. The idea seemed simple: ban alcohol and society would improve. In 1920, the United States made the production and sale of alcohol illegal. Supporters believed this would reduce crime, domestic violence, and poverty. They hoped families would become healthier and more stable, but reality unfolded differently. Instead of disappearing, alcohol went underground. Secret bars known as speakeasies appeared in cities. Organized crime groups began producing and distributing illegal liquor. Gangsters built massive criminal empires. Violence increased as rival groups fought for control. Police corruption also spread, with officers accepting bribes to ignore illegal activity. Ordinary citizens often ignored the law entirely. Drinking became a rebellious act. Some historians argue that prohibition unintentionally strengthened organized crime more than any other policy. After more than a decade, the government admitted the experiment had failed. In 1933, prohibition was repealed, but its impact remained. It showed that banning something widely accepted by society can sometimes create bigger problems. The law became a classic example of good intentions leading to unintended consequences. India's Public Safety Act. This law allowed authorities to detain individuals without trial for extended periods. Officials justified it as a necessary tool for maintaining public order. They argued that preventive detention could stop violence before it happened. However, critics quickly pointed out the risks. People could be arrested based on suspicion alone. In some cases, detainees were held for months without formal charges. Families often struggled to understand why their relatives were taken. Legal challenges were difficult due to limited transparency. Supporters believed the law prevented unrest. Opponents argued it could silence dissent and restrict freedom. Human rights organizations repeatedly called for reforms. The controversy surrounding the Public Safety Act continues today. It remains a powerful example of how security laws can spark debates over individual rights. The Enabling Act. Germany in 1933 was unstable and fearful. Political tensions were high, and many citizens wanted strong leadership. The Enabling Act promised exactly that. It allowed the government to pass laws without parliamentary approval. Supporters believed it would restore order quickly. But the consequences were immediate. Democratic checks disappeared. Political opponents were silenced. Civil liberties were restricted. The law effectively handed total power to one leader. Within months, Germany transformed from a democracy into a dictatorship. The Enabling Act didn't look extreme at first glance. It was framed as a temporary measure, yet it opened the door to authoritarian rule. Historians often cite it as a warning. Legal changes, even small ones, can dramatically shift power. The Enabling Act became one of the most dangerous laws ever passed because it dismantled democracy from within. The Fugitive Slave Act. Imagine living in a place where helping another human being could make you a criminal. That's exactly what the Fugitive Slave Act did in 1850. This law required citizens, even in states where slavery was illegal, to help capture escaped slaves. It didn't matter if you personally opposed slavery. Refusing to assist could lead to fines or jail time. The law also stripped accused individuals of basic legal rights. They couldn't testify in their own defense, and they weren't given a jury trial. In many cases, judges were paid more money if they ruled that the person should be returned to slavery, creating a disturbing incentive. The consequences were immediate. Free black citizens were sometimes kidnapped and falsely accused of being escaped slaves. Once taken south, proving their freedom became almost impossible. Fear spread across northern states. Communities formed secret networks to help people escape to Canada. These efforts later became known as part of the Underground Railroad. Supporters of the law argued it protected property rights and upheld the Constitution. But critics saw it as forcing ordinary citizens to participate in cruelty. The Fugitive Slave Act didn't just divide the country politically, it created moral conflict in everyday life. Many historians believe it pushed the United States closer to the Civil War. The law remains one of the clearest examples of how legislation can force society to confront its deepest ethical boundaries.